everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark, and I am so excited about this week's episode because we are talking about a topic that I've been seeing everywhere on social media, and that is silent book clubs. And we have some here in the Valley, and we have two guests today who are part of two different silent book clubs. We have Carrie Ann, who is in a Central Phoenix silent book club, and also Victoria in the East Valley. Welcome. Thank you guys for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. Yes.
So I think the big question, the first question we really need to get to is, what is a silent book club?
Well, the Silent Book Club is basically just people coming together who enjoy reading, but haven't really fit into the mold of traditional book clubs where you have an assigned book, assigned reading to do, and then discussions in a setting. And it really welcomes people who aren't fitting that and want to collaborate and still read with other readers and be amongst their people without that pressure.
Yeah, I usually describe it as a flash mob, but instead of showing up and dancing, you show up and read.
I love that. So tell me about your respective chapters.
All right. The Phoenix chapter has been meeting since January 2020, which actually was a very unfortunate time to start meeting. And I hadn't even known about it at that time. I jumped in 2021 in August and reached out to the chapter, and they said they fell off the boat once COVID hit, and welcomed me to take it over. And I'm like, yes, please. So we have been meeting since August 2021, once a month. It's increased to twice a month recently just because of demand, and depends on schedules. But yeah, the Phoenix chapter meets in Metro Phoenix.
The East Valley chapter, I believe it began January of 23 by a gal. She started it up and had a meeting and realized with her work schedule she was having a really hard time, putting together the volunteer type meetings. Reached out and was like, anyone want to give us a hand, help do meetings? So myself, I was like, I'll help. So I became a part of it in February. We've been doing meetings once a month as well and have also upticked. The East Valley includes Gilbert, Chandler, Mesa is like our bread and butter. A little bit in Tempe. We've wanted to venture to Ahwatukee to kind of cast that net. But yeah, Mesa, Gilbert, and Chandler are where we kind of reside.
Cool.
Yeah, this past year we have, the Valley has so many more chapters because it was just Phoenix for a couple of years. And then we had the East Valley, and then we had the West Valley and Northwest Valley. And this morning I actually just got a Instagram friend request from Southeast Valley. Yep. So as demand goes up, more chapters are opening around the Valley.
So cool. I think most people are familiar with traditional book clubs. For you, what was so appealing about the idea of a silent book club?
Being able to bring my own book that I was reading, which actually happened to be for the traditional book club that I'm in, and having a way to sneak away and get that reading time in, and then maybe see what someone else is reading and pick up recommendations and stuff.
Yeah, I've always just been drawn to reading with others. I try to drag my family and friends to reading. So that's how I stumbled upon it in the first place. I just Googled like flash mob reading or mob reading, and came across silentbookclub.org, and saw that there was a Phoenix chapter. So that's really what drew me in, and just to be able to be amongst people with shared interests.
So silent is in the title, but you don't necessarily have to be silent, but you can be silent if you choose to be.
Yes, there is always conversation at Silent Book Club. It never stays silent for all too long. And if there is any silence, usually it's broken by a bunch of giggles once we realize that we're being silent. But yeah, everyone will see others with a book they have read or would like to read, or book accessories, a Kindle cover that they love and want to ask about. So the conversation is flowing during it.
Yeah, you'll have members or individuals that'll sneak in and sneak out, just kind of check it out and get a vibe for it. And then by the next one, they're, oh, hey, what's that book? And it kind of creates a little bit of community. So there's always that not so silent part.
Yeah.
I think when you're an adult and you're not in school anymore, it can be difficult sometimes to make friends, especially make friends that that also love reading. Has that really changed for you guys? Have you been able to meet a lot of different people? What has that looked like?
I have met many people just as being the organizer. A lot of people come up and introduce themselves. But yeah, people come with their friends or they end up making friends there. Just depending on if they want to have that conversation. But there's also the opportunity for them to just go and be introverted and read their book silently if they so choose.
Yeah. We had one meeting where a gal introduced a bunch of us to Storygraph, and we're friends on there, and we share what we're reading on there, and there's like a little side community. There's members that are actually from other countries, and they'll stop in just to say hello and see if they can meet someone to go hike with or go read with or grab coffee with another day. So it's a great community element.
So tell me a little bit about what attendance has been like. How have you seen that grown? How have you seen the interest grown in the last few years?
Yeah, when I took over the Phoenix chapter, like the Instagram had about 100 followers, and our first meetup, I'm like, oh, I hope someone shows up. And there were like 15 to 20 people who showed up at that first one. And a year later, we went to the same place just to celebrate our 1 year. And the worry then had been, is there going to be enough room for everyone? Because over the year, so much, thanks to social media, has drawn people to Silent Book Club and has put us with the situation where we need to find either bigger places or do a sign-in reservation sort of system. But yeah, it's grown exponentially. And even just the organization in general, I think they had about 200 chapters when I first started, and now they have like, I think 700 across 5 countries. So yeah.
Yeah. When our traffic picked up, when I joined, there was, I think, 60 members to the group, and we're now sitting at 700. When our traffic picked up, I was like, oh my goodness. And then I looked at Phoenix and I was like, oh my goodness. So there's definitely, over the course of this past year, social media, the Seattle, it's been great. So
what do you think is so appealing about it to people? What do you think is, they see it on social media. What do you think is actually drawing people to the meetups?
I think it's just being such a low pressure situation. Much like libraries, like it's free to go to. You can just show up and be with others and read your book. So that's really what we've seen, that it's just a good way to meet people and enjoy your reading.
Absolutely. The no pressure element, you can show up, see if it's for you. For the price of a cup of coffee, you might sit there for 30 minutes and you know that it's completely open to what your comfort level is.
Yeah, like the Phoenix chapter every chapter is a little different, but we always do a 3-hour time frame. So people can come and go as they please. Some people stay there for 3 hours and get a lot of reading in. And then some people just come in for 15 to 30 minutes and read and leave. I'm sure some people walk in and get scared and just walk right out, but it's so low pressure, no one would know. So
yeah,
I think that's really enticing.
Yeah, it can be stressful to walk into a room where maybe you don't know anybody, or maybe you're just not really sure like what to expect. I know the New York Times recently did an article about sort of a similar idea, and they had people that they had to turn away because there were so many people sort of interested. What would you guys say to someone who's listening who might be interested but maybe a little hesitant to, meet new people or try something new?
Just come in and try it, walk in. No one will even know you're there for Silent Book Club. It's just at normal hours at the cafe or bar or wherever you're meeting. Sit down and read your book, and maybe you'll meet someone and love it. Or if you hate it, it's no pressure. You can just pass.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a book bag or a purse that you have your book in, you could walk in, and if you're not comfortable, no one would know. They wouldn't even see your book. But I promise you, most times, if they see your book, you'll get a wave and a smile from someone.
Yeah. And that's worth it. A wave and a smile. That's all we can ask for in life, is it? And a coffee and a good book.
Right. And oftentimes there are free stickers,
bookmarks.
Yeah. There's always some little personal touch to each of the admin that they bring to a meeting.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. And the Phoenix chapter does a word search contest. Are you doing that as well?
I picked that up after I went to one of your guys' meetings, and we do too.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about that. What is that?
We pick 1 to 2 or 3 words at random, and then whoever finds that word in their book or Kindle will bring it over and get a $5 gift card to the venue that we're meeting at.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, it's a little fun element to the whole experience. Yeah.
For you guys who were organizers of these chapters, what has been the highlight for you in the past, few years since you started doing this?
My favorite moment is just sitting there and then looking around and seeing a whole entire cafe filled with people who are reading. And even having people who pass by and they're like, what is this? And they see the sign. And we always have a traveling little library with us, so people can just pass by. And if they want to join in, they can just take a book and sit down and read. So that's been my favorite part, just seeing the community all reading at once.
Yeah, I've had a couple members at the end of the meeting come up and with just like the biggest smile and like, thank you for doing this. And it's like, thank you for coming. And the vendors will also stop and talk to us of wherever we're at. And they're like, that's an amazing concept. And they're grateful for the foot traffic too. So it's, I absolutely love the community aspect. Otherwise, I would just be at home, cuddle up with my book, but I get that little human element of it too.
Yeah, working with the vendors has been a highlight throughout the year as well. At first, it was me reaching out, but now that it's become more popular, people reach out to us and say like, "Hey, can you come?" And it's a win-win for the vendors and us, and we try to schedule it at a time where they are less busy, so the seating options are better for us, and they get more business when they wouldn't normally.
We help fill that downtime, and then we get the space and we get to hang out.
Very symbiotic.
So what books are you guys reading right now that you love, or have you read a book recently that you really love?
I think the last book that I read that I was just swooned over was Hello, Beautiful.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that girl, she really gets you in the feels. And then there's always been guilty pleasures sprinkled throughout of just fun little books.
Yeah.
But that one, there's lots of feels with that one.
Yeah.
Yes, I think myself and many people at Silent Book Club had the guilty pleasure of reading Iron Flame. A big one for everyone. But I am also very much enjoying my current read called The Librarian by Allie Morgan. It's a memoir of someone who began working in the library system, I believe in Scotland, and just highlighting the benefits of the libraries and, again, the community aspect of it.
I read The Fourth Wing. I haven't gotten the Iron Flame yet. It's long. That's what the only thing that I've heard is that it's just kind of a longer, it's like, I think over 700 pages. It's a little bit longer than the first one. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is a little longer.
Okay. It's worth it.
I think so.
Okay. We won't give any spoilers, but I was hesitant to read The Fourth Wing because I'm usually not that much into fantasy. Like, I loved Harry Potter, but that was sort of been it. But even for someone that didn't love fantasy, I was really into that book. And now I want 2 dragons.
Yeah, of course. There's a huge movement with fantasy because I know people have a hard time with the world building and everything. And there's been this beauty of this fantasy that evolves where it's like, no, it's okay. Like it's like intro to the sci-fi and the fantasy where you can get all those pieces and you're like, oh no, I'll pick that up and that up and that up now.
And I kind of felt like also with The Fourth Wing that it almost seemed like this could be possible. Like I'm like, oh yeah, this seems like it could be real. Like it wasn't so much world building that it seemed completely unrealistic, I guess, if that makes sense. Have you guys picked up any recommendations from Silent Book Club?
I have a list in my phone.
Every time I usually see people reading things that are on my TBR and it just gives me validation. Like, okay, they said I need to read this, so I will put that higher up on my list.
Yeah, there was one gal at a meeting and she was so engrossed in her book when everyone was kind of packing up and leaving. And I stopped and I was like, can I snap a picture of your book? Because you are so into it, you've sold me on it. I don't even need to know what it's about.
Do you remember what book it was?
I don't. It's a photo in my gallery.
You have the photo. That's all that matters. Yes. And you mentioned Storygraph. Do you guys use Goodreads? Do you use Storygraph? Do you have a preference?
Storygraph all the way.
Okay.
I do both.
Okay.
So I'm still stuck on Goodreads. It's what I started out with. And then heard about Storygraph actually at Peacock Wine Bar, had a pop-up book fair. They have adult book fairs, which are great. So I was talking to some ladies there, and they told me about Storygraph. So I transferred my information over, and I still can't get rid of Goodreads, but Storygraph I do think is elite.
Okay. I use Goodreads as well, and it is kind of hard to make the switch. Yeah. What is so much better about Storygraph? Like, why do you prefer Storygraph?
I prefer the interface. There's graphs, there's charts, there's everything, anyone neurospicy, just seeing all the stats, being able to log it and having it right there. You can still track your progress and do all those great things with Goodreads. The interface with Storygraph, just seeing all the colors and charts and graphs, it's just right there.
Yeah, very visually pleasing.
Yes,
for sure.
I think you've sold me. I mean, checking off that you've finished a book is like one of the most rewarding feelings in the world.
Goodreads was down once when I finished a book. And I'm like, please. And it was like near midnight too. So I'm like, I need to make sure it's today.
Yeah.
But I just had to edit my dates the next day.
There you go, do a little back date. Yeah. Storygraph was actually down the beginning of this year. They had such an influx.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, everybody's on both of those guys.
And I guess, beginning of the year, people are making their New Year's resolutions. What advice, because I hear this a lot, people always tell me that they want to get into reading and they want to read more. And what advice would you guys have for people that are interested in reading more that just can't seem to quite get into it?
My personal strategy whenever I fell off the rails with reading was to pick up a book of short stories just so that I wouldn't have to have my attention held through 700 pages and could just do little bits at a time. And that sort of helped me tumble back in and build up my reading stamina.
My only advice is I would share that if you read one book, you're just as avid as a reader as someone who reads a ton more books. Mm-hmm. So that one book, pick something easy like a short story and just let yourself fall into it.
I think there can be a lot of pressure, especially on social media, to feel like we need to read a ton of books. Like, you need to read this many books a year to be a reader. But to your point, I mean, everyone's a reader. You can read one short story a year and you're still a reader.
Yep, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that about, silent book clubs because there is no pressure to be someone who reads 100 books a year or anything. Like, even I do like 20 to 30 a year, and I see people who are reading 100, and that's good for them, and they're reading. I'm quite envious, but yeah, everyone's a reader no matter how many.
Yep. Yeah, people that read 100 books, it's like, okay, but which ones were your favorites?
Yeah,
because I know you've read them all.
Yes.
So let me know. Like, thank you for doing that research for me.
Definitely.
So if people are listening and they think that this is something for them and they really want to try out Silent Book Club, where is the best place to find some information?
I would start on Instagram. Our handle is SBC Phoenix AZ and East Valley.
We're on Instagram as well, and it's Silent Book Club East Valley AZ.
Okay.
Yep. But if you are outside of the Valley, traveling or anything, if you just go to silentbookclub.org, you can find a chapter anywhere in the world. So,
okay. Yeah. And we're at the beginning of the new year. Any big sort of goals or changes you can expect within your respective branches this year?
Just trying out more places every year. We will do some repeats of venues we've really enjoyed, but trying out new cafes and bars and parks and venues is always something that we really love doing. So that's the other fun part of Silent Book Club is you get to see different places around the Valley.
Yeah. I think our big changes that we have on our docket is more behind the scenes, just kind of getting more into the Instagram and how we're posting things and making it more visible and user-friendly to know the updates, and maybe ironing out our schedule a little bit. But yeah, we'll be there. We'll be out there.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thank you both so much. This is such a cool thing to talk about. I think I consider myself an extroverted introvert. So I feel like Silent Book Club is where it's at for a lot of people who also love to read too.
Yes, definitely.
Introverts in the wild.
Yeah. I love that.
We're so happy to spread the word about Silent Book Clubs. And if anyone's listening, come on out. We're ready for you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Whitney.